Welcome to the ATG podcast. Goal is 20 minutes sharp. Keegan, today the ATG mentor, he's on YouTube, he's on Instagram. He is going to help us with a lecture. The goal is that all of us fully understand what is short range, long range. Quickly though, we can catch up on news from the week. In our Pulse chat with the coaches, Keegan, we saw a lot of older people having wins this week.
Yeah, it's one of the coolest things about this group that I never expected. Like, I always sort of thought it'd be great if elderly people did get more exposure to strength training. I think that's really well understood in the research. But now it turns out that we're actually, training a lot of these people, and coaches are so excited about training elderly, which really wasn't on the radar for me, or probably for a lot of them either before.
Well, Coach Josh Whitlock has this 92-year-old with the desire to run. But it's the same thing. People heard my story, and I remember the first thing I would get is like, oh yeah, well, you're young. Wait till you're 40, wait till you're 50. Yeah. How about wait till you're 92? You know what I mean? So it's the same concept of gain. If you're doing a kind of training that makes a 92-year-old want to run, you're heading in a bulletproofing direction, very different from breaking the body down. We also had, we saved these. I didn't want to forget. This is a coach, Arneef, with an 80-year-old who's like now wants to be pursuing like masters. He wants to be like a masters champion now, and he's 80, and he had been through 5 years of constant pain, lost mobility, now 2 months of training. It's cool to see the old people making wins, and I think that segues us. Let's just dive in. What is short range, long range? Why are these old people getting wins? Why are you jumping higher? Why am I jumping higher?
Yeah, I think it's like easy to sort of dismiss it as hype. And if you've looked at strength training a little bit, you've read a few muscle magazines, or you got a basic strength certification, then you might think like, okay, I'm training biceps. That means I've got that muscle group ticked off. I've got X amount of volume. I've got the load. That's all I really need to know about. That's all there is to it. That's how most people look at strength training. And then if you get into like really specific sports stuff, then it's like about trying to mimic motor patterns and, mimic movements and those sorts of things. But there is like another way to look at it that I didn't get in my first 20 years of strength training. Just towards the last few years, I was trying to figure out like, there's something else here that I think Charles had understood that I didn't get, that I wasn't really picking up. And I was sort of searching for it and fumbling around with it because I'd been doing the mobility stuff, and I knew there was something cool about mobility and something cool about strength training, but I hadn't put it all together. Then I saw Ben Patrick online, and I was looking at your Instagram, and I looked at exactly how you were sequencing things. I was like, shit, this guy, not only has he worked out there's connective tissue dominant movements, there's movements that will actually build your flexibility, and there's ones that won't build your flexibility. And if you sequence them in the right way, then you can get a result that is otherwise impossible. Like, and I just thought, my mind was blown. I was like, finally, someone has actually worked this out. They've sequenced it. It's cool that it's for the lower body, and like you're actually getting results with it. So you already had the case studies and testimonials. I was like, man, this is mind blowing.
Let's throw in some examples so that anyone watching this can look at visuals. So let's say we look at a slant board reverse step up. We like to start without the slant board because we like to actually work that ankle mobility, but we do other drills for the ankle mobility like knees over toes, calf raises, and tibialis and all that stuff. So I think probably a really good simple one to visualize is if you have the slant board and you're doing a reverse step up, we're really working this top range, this short range. That's very different. If we think about a squat, let's consider the squat as like this mid-range. Even if you go all the way down, the squat's up and down, and really the toughest part is getting through that midpoint. Now we have this reverse slant board step up, working that short range. And then let's take the ATG split squat, where if we actually get a side-by-side, we'll see that with an ATG split squat, when your thigh is at the midpoint, your knee's not even over your toes yet. So it really loads. And then at the top, your knee is way behind your toes. So it actually, the midpoint is still not over toes, only in this end range. So for me, the ATG split squat and the reverse step up, those were like my saviors, not to mention they're balancing my strength perfectly even between sides. So the balance between sides, the short range reverse step up, the long range ATG split squat, those I feel like are the bulletproofing that then we see, whether it's world class power lifters or whatever, that mid-range then gets easier to train. But so just keep diving into this. Why does that work? Why does short range, long range work? Why not just do mid-range?
Yes. So when you undo mid-range, strength is gained in the range it's trained is one of the kind of slogans that Charles popularized. So you get strong in the middle, but what he worked out is that if you're not strong on the ends, then you're more vulnerable to injury. So that muscle is more likely to tear. And also for him, with the biggest arms in history, it was interesting from the perspective of extra muscle growth. So you could get more muscle growth if you trained strength in each of the positions. So there's like fresh hypertrophy that came specific, to the positions. And that concept isn't really well understood. It hasn't been extrapolated across to all strength. With the split squat, it's actually, as you say, like that very last part of the movement is not the heaviest part, but you are getting into that very deep part. So it will help to rebuild the long range. Then you can take it even further into extreme long range, which kind of feels like a stretch, right? Which is like when you do the sissy squats or when you do the reverse Nordics, where you feel like all the fascia is pulling and it's like something's going to pop here. Like when someone's not used to those movements, they're really, really slow, really tentative. They can't really recruit the muscles because the body is saying, hey, there's a lot of connective tissue strain here. If you contract these muscles hard, something might pop. And that's what happens when you first train long range.
Yep. And the current approach we're taking, that reverse Nordic, and you and I have a video right here on YouTube. It's the most viewed reverse Nordic video on YouTube. The reverse Nordic scales really well and allows that full range. Now, it's not that the sissy squat doesn't scale itself too, but it's almost like there's more chance of error for someone to do it. And so our current approach is that we're putting the sissy squat into that category of doing the splits, of doing a bridge, of something that you will get from the system, but it's actually, the sissy squat is not actually in the system. So I wouldn't stop someone, if they wanted to add it on, but with these other components, we're seeing that it's just very easy to get to sissy squats. And if you're improving your reverse step-ups and ATG split squats and your quad length, you can start gently with the couch stretch and then you gradually progress that into reverse Nordic. You did biomechanically just create a sissy squat. So that is our current approach. And you've known me for a long time now, and you've known that my volume of sissy squats has always been tiny compared to my volume of these other qualities, which have just always been staples through my knee transformation. So I think part of the best thing I can do is just make it as simple as possible for people to travel the route that I took with my knees. Now, when we go to the hamstring though, and now we're adding in these same concepts, and let's give credit not only to Charles Poliquin, let's give credit to Louis Simmons. Louis Simmons, I'll have to find this video for Drew. He had this guy 330 pounds doing full Nordic reps. Now he was tapping his chest at the bottom, which allows you to bounce out of that long range. But let's look at a Nordic. When the hamstring is shortened in a Nordic, there's no tension yet. It quite literally gets harder as you approach long range, the deeper you get. Drew, you can throw up my clip from yesterday on the Nordic when we did this video on like how to run more like Usain Bolt. Well, if you look when you run, the hamstring actually is under tension as it's lengthening. So the Nordic is like this golden place of gains there too, which some people train. And look at Louis Simmons doing that, and Louis Simmons doing short range. So we also use a balance of the Nordic and like of a leg curl where it gets tougher. And particular, have you tried that monkey foot yet?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like so hard in that short range. It's ridiculous.
100%. Yeah. It's a different stimulus again.
Yeah. So we currently pump reps and then we try to get where we can actually hold that. But those are two ranges right there. Now you add in for the hip, the most simplistic would be like a 45-degree back extension, because you kind of get to work the long range and you get to work the short range in a single thing. So that's my personal favorite, because I also get to work one side at a time and I get to safely go to failure. If I hit failure on a single-legged back extension, nothing happens. You know what I mean? But if I hit failure on some other back lifts, I feel like I'm potentially going under more stress. So I'm training not only my knee, but also my hamstring. And as we know, the hamstring acts as a knee flexor and as a hip extensor. So I'm training my knee extensors and my hamstrings as knee flexors and hip extensors in the short and the long range. I don't do traditional squats and deadlifts, but I wanted to point out some interesting math for someone. Let's say, and keep in mind, I'm a basketball player. Let's say I could squat rock bottom, let's say 300 pounds. I know I can do some more than that, but let's just, for math purposes, let's just take 5 reps. Let's say 5 reps with 300 pounds rock bottom. For a basketball player who's not very heavy, that would be very good.
Yeah.
Right. We're not comparing to people in those sports. But here's what I want to point out. When I do a 6-inch box and I throw a slant board on there, I can put my body weight on my back for 5 reps in a Poliquin step up. And my point is that now means I'm handling my entire body weight on one leg compared to a squat where you have 2 legs to handle your body weight, and my full body weight. So we're taking the math really of over a double body weight squat because it's one leg. I'll have to write this out as some math, like for an article. So what would be a mid-range single leg exercise? Would be like a pistol squat, right? So you can't even push off with that bottom foot. Same with the reverse step up. How many people are pistol squatting 5 reps with their body weight on their back? So my point is that you actually can train your muscle harder in the short range. And now let's look at an ATG split squat. Let's say I throw my body weight on my back for 5 reps all the way down an ATG split squat. Same thing. You're talking about you can actually get more concentrated load in the long range and the short range than trying to put it together in the mid range. So we also do this with high reps, right? If I tell you like, yeah, just, pump out 25 pistol squats, whatever, but we can really easily groove in super high reps in the long range or the short range. So it's not just that we're hitting ranges that most people haven't tapped into. I think that's a huge part of it. It's like newbie gains if you haven't trained them. You're also getting sort of a mechanical advantage that you can get more concentrated strength training in those ranges. And that's why training those ranges recently helped. I've mentioned it, but it recently helped a guy who was plateaued at an 875-pound squat with knee pain, and he now busted through a 1,000-pound squat powerlifting without knee pain. It's the same force that allows me to jump higher. You're able to express more in that mid-range. Jumping is more of a mid-range activity. You're getting in that mid-range and having to explode out. So the better and more balanced you are between sides in short and long range on both sides of a joint. So now we're talking about if you just took your knee itself. So if we took Nordic and leg curls and Poliquin step ups, the slant board reverse step up, and ATG split squats, and we took both sides, you know what I mean? We're talking really about like 8 zones of strength. I know I'm just rambling here, but we don't currently train the Nordic one side at a time because we do train the short range one side at a time. It's at least pretty damn good. And we train the back extension one side. So if you're getting single leg back extension, monkey foot leg curl, and Nordic, it's because you can train the Nordic one side at a time, but you're just going to be getting so much less range there that it's like, I don't feel it's as good. But there's my rant. Give me some rant on short range, long range.
Yeah. So you can get a bit wild with it, right? Like you can try to like cover every range, single leg, like unilaterally on every single. You don't have to take it to the extreme of the extreme. The concept is really, really powerful. And if you're strong in the short, in the middle, in the long, and in the extreme long. So initially extreme long is just like static stretching, but we take that further. And when you take it further, then you actually don't need to static stretch. In our experience, like you get to a point where you can open up those ranges and you can just access them whenever you want. But not only can you access them unloaded, you can access them with a fair bit of load, because the same as like, you don't want to go loading yourself up with 200 kilos on a squat. If you're not in the habit of that, you don't want to go loading yourself up in a reverse Nordic or a side split or a front split if you're not used to those positions. Exactly the same logic, prepare your body for the load. That's a killer
point.
Yeah.
That's a huge point. When we talk about extreme long range, we actually don't approach it. We take a philosophy of like the best load is the one that feels best. So for us, that would be something like maybe like Jefferson curl and reverse Nordic. And again, I would consider those additional steps not as important as just short range, long range. Whereas short range, long, I mean, you can safely push to, muscular failure in short, long. When it comes to extreme, it's a very personal process that where we do the standing groin. That's huge. I'm getting so much benefit from that. It's so simple. My whole basketball career, tons of guys straining groins. No one ever taught, well, gradually build up your strength through that range. But it's not like we're like trying to add weight and like max it out. So when it comes to extreme long, you have to understand that it's not, that's icing on the cake. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really important point. Now, when I take a back extension, single leg, I can take that to straight to failure. So it's important to know the different tools.
The other big thing that I've got for you there on the short and long, the long is really much, much more powerful for muscle growth. So we're going to cause a significant amount of muscle damage. Inflammation is going to take longer to recover from. If you already have pain in the joint, then the long stuff is your enemy. You need to be very gentle, progressive, be very conservative with the long stuff and do the short work first. So think of the long as being the key for hypertrophy, the key for damaging the muscle. And then the short we can think of as building the mind-muscle connection. So it's very good neurologically. It causes a lot less inflammation. Okay, so sometimes as a coach, you don't want to cause a lot of inflammation. If you start working with someone and they've had like inflammatory issues in their body, which is a lot of people, starting with concentric dominant short range movements as being your intensity, which would be like the reverse out knee pain, which is the number one thing that everybody, if everybody in the world just started doing ROKP, the world would change dramatically in terms of metabolic and musculoskeletal health, overnight. So the short is where everyone can start. And then we need to be a little bit more conservative on stirring up that inflammation and muscle growth on the long and the extreme long.
Yep. Just gave me a pretty cool realization, a cool way to finish out. We have like 3 minutes left. Tom Platz, arguably best legs in bodybuilding history. He's in his 60s, still teaching squat courses. Can you imagine the amount of, load this guy put on his knees? This guy's had an unreal, one of the greatest knee qualities of life of all time. Now check this out. His squat was legendary form. And the better your squat form gets, the more long range you're kind of hitting. Whereas 100%. The worse your squat and the more your knees can't handle it and they shoot back instantly and it just becomes more mid-range. So he had that squat. He also would go hard on leg extensions, which is short range. So, and he would really try to work that short range of leg extension. Yeah. And he would do extreme long range with like using these hack squat machines, knees all the way over, sissy squats. But let's take this for a second. Anyone who's going to look at that who has knee pain is going to go, those leg extensions hurt my knees to look at. Those squats hurt my knees to look at. Those extreme hack squats hurt my knees to look at. Awesome. Let's take a look at our zero program. Let's start with those leg extensions. Regressed, assisted, reverse step up. You're literally working your short range. Now regressed, assisted ATG split squat. You're now working towards that line of Tom Platz squat. And then just start gently getting into a couch stretch where you can handle it. And there you're actually putting gentle energy towards that extreme long. So you can follow the same principles just at a level. That to me, that's the trick of knee training or any area of training for pain and performance, is when you realize that we all can do all the motions that we want to do. It's just at what level. But you have the Tom Platz genius, Charles Poliquin's genius, Louis Simmons' genius. These guys were all onto this short range, long range.
Yeah. And I just don't know, it was never really mapped out like this. You can see it in Charles's arm programs and you can see it with what Tom Platz was doing. And it wasn't until I saw what you were doing that it was like, oh, this is what every coach needs to know. Like, I need to make sure every coach knows this, and we've been gradually working together more and more since then.
Yeah. And it's pretty simple. Charles himself loved his arms. He was older, wasn't competing in a sport, and he was training world champions who already were starting out at a pretty high level. Tom Platz wanted to be the best bodybuilder he could be. Louis Simmons wants to be the best powerlifting coach and powerlifter he can be. Me, I'm the ultra fragile guy, who wants to be not fragile. I've just applied. So it's the same principles applied to ultra fragility and then building the way out of it. Last thing I'm going to say, Uncle Drew, who's been my editor through all these videos, he's now dunking a basketball. And sadly, we didn't get that first dunk on camera when everyone goes crazy. Somehow they botched the film and they tried to look into the security camera. They couldn't find it. But when we started together, I was like, dude, you're going to be able to dunk. You know what I mean? And he's trained with me, with our ATG staff who are still there in Clearwater, Florida, just doing our programs. He's a modest guy, an ultra hard worker. And then before we know it, it's like, oh my God, he's dunking a dodgeball. And now he's dunking. This guy who's played basketball his whole life. So, he's showing, and now he's saying like, this is just the beginning, this guy's going to be throwing down. If my editor is throwing down dunks and you're a basketball player who thinks you don't have the genetics for it, he's paving the way and showing that you do have the genetics for it.
It's giving hope to everyone. Everyone needs a little bit more of that. And that's everyone's journey is so important. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're going to play in the NBA or you're playing in front of your kids. Like, your journey, the person who's listening to this, it's your journey that matters most. If you get your journey to the next level, that's the best thing you can do to support ATG. That's the best thing you can do, for your children's future. Like, that's the best contribution you can make to the world, is just get your own stuff to the next level. And even with the zero, I just want to touch on one thing with the zero, because I know we're closing out. Even if you can't even do the step ups, because I know the step ups are intimidating as shit to people as well. The zero is even better than that, in that you're getting a pump in the calves and the tibialis, and you're getting gentle work on the knees. And a lot of people
isometric knees over toes at your level, potentially with 2 legs on that KOT calf raise. That's one of my favorite exercises. Yeah. If all I had was the KOT calf raise, because I do them single leg now, I do them high rep single leg or with weight. If that's all I had, I could play basketball the rest of my life without knee pain. If that's all I had.
People miss that all the time. And I think, that if people talk about isometrics and this and that, the way that program starts is genius, and it's really important. We have that buy-in concept in a lot of the programs. So even if you're like, I can't even do anything on my knees, give the other stuff a shot. Like, because people will miss that, and then they'll think, well, this isn't for me because I can't even do that step 1 that he just said. But it's like, no, you can, because that's 4. Not step 1. That's exactly.
Yep. And the PVC pipes then are becoming really a game changer. They're so cheap, and they allow you to just get like a more natural, rather than kind of setting up chairs, they just allow you to get like a more natural assistance on steps 4, 5, and then possibly 6 when we add in squats. But anyways, well done, Drew. By the time we talk next, Keegan, next Thursday, I will have done a dunk session on Wednesday. I'm going to be attempting my dunk session in zero shoes. I have not been on a wood basketball court since I left Florida last June, over a year ago. So to say I'm excited to dunk, oh my God, like, it hurts how long it's been since I've been on a wood court. But I'm going to see, for me, my, the feet and just like really bulletproofing from the ground up is a big deal to me, because I also had the shin splints and the foot pain. So I'm trying to inspire better basketball shoes to be made, and I'm going to see what I can do in these bad boys on the court. So by next podcast, we'll be looking at some dunk visuals of me in zero shoes. We'll see what I got.
Very cool. Looking forward to seeing the footage, and good luck. Throw them down.
Yep. Thanks. All right. Thanks, ATG fam. See you later.